Okay. Hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we were working on the Festo Buddy 2 plugin, and in response to someone's comment in chat, we diverted from Harvestmath specific changes to just make the entire main window scalable, so it was more easily usable in different size resolution screens. Today we're going to finish up what we didn't finish there and then keep working on Harvestmath updates. As always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. Aaron Bard is in chat. Hello, I saw an email from you come in about Songbook. Okay. Let me see, where am I? Do I want to be here? I was here for missions. I don't think that is a useful thing right now. So we're going to come into milestone skills and go somewhere. We'll go to Hidbolt. Yeah, so Aaron Bard, if you don't mind, I'll summarize what I remember of your email at a high level and then talk about ways to transfer plugins and plugin data from one machine to another. Ixie says, Evernight, just had an announcement. World shutting down in 15 minutes. Good news, I'm on Treebeard. /LOC. You are on Treebeard server. Yes, but thank you for letting people know. If you are on Evernight, be prepared for that. Okay, so Aaron Bard sent an email, and I don't have it up in front of me, but what it basically was is they have Songbook, a plugin, numerous plugins set up on one machine, and they were attempting to clone that setup on a different machine. And so when you're talking about LOTRO plugins, you're talking about two things: the plugins themselves and their save files, or the plugin data. And when you're trying to mimic a setup from one machine to another, duplicating both of those is the key to getting a consistent plugin experience. So we're going to take a look at that. Let's go ahead and open up a couple of folders. So, unless you've done something interesting in your setup, the location for both of these things, plugins and plugin data, are in your Documents Lord of the Rings Online folder. Now, on a clean install, this will be less cluttered. Stuff has accumulated here over time. But specifically, we're looking at plugin data and plugins. And so if we were to, let's actually just pretend for a moment, make believe here, new documents. So if you are going to a new system and you've installed Lord of the Rings Online to that computer, then you're going to have in your Documents folder on that machine, the Lord of the Rings Online. You're going to have that, and it's going to come preloaded with some things, right? You're going to see a LOTRO key map in there. You're going to see a user preferences. You're probably going to see this CEF in there. You might see a UI in there. So I'll make a couple of those as well. So yeah. But you won't have all your old screenshots because those are just computer specific. And by default, you might not even have a plugins folder or a plugin data folder. And so the simple thing that you can do, if you can easily copy files between the two computers, is you want to just take everything that's in plugin data and everything that's in plugins and just copy it over to that new machine. It gets harder if you already had stuff set up on that machine. You already had some plugins installed. You already had some plugin data. Because there's not an easy way to merge plugin information from two machines together. It's possible to write a plugin to do that. You could have a plugin that manages merging data from different things. But because every plugin is responsible for its own file format, like it all gets dumped out like a Lua table in a file. Let's go take a look at one here. Well, that's not what I was expecting. So it all gets dumped out into a file, and this is just a Lua table that's serialized out to a file. And so that means the ordering of things in the file is semi-random looking, because we're not iterating through in a meaningfully ordered way when we serialize this to a file, and it's just whatever it was, whatever that table is that you say send this to a file. So it has keys, it has values. Those values can be tables themselves that can have their own keys and values, and so on. So every plugin, after the fact that you say, hey, save this to a file, load that from a file, whatever that chunk of data is that you've sent to a file, it's completely up to the plugin how it is structured. And so a plugin could definitely know how to merge two of these together and be like, oh, do you prefer data from one or the other if there's conflicts? But I don't think there's a generalized solution for that. Okay, so Aaron Bard is adding information. So yes, this is all a straightforward transfer if all you're doing is moving from machine to machine. Part of a trick comes if you want to duplicate Songbook or other plugin setups from one account to another. And that's because the data here is being stored in a multi-tiered system, a cascading system. And so in your plugin data, you're going to see directories for accounts, and then on account, you'll see directories for servers, and then in servers, you'll see directories for characters. And unfortunately, this does not have a lot of detail in it. So I'm actually going to come out and grab a more fully fledged version of this. So in our clone here, plugin data, we're going to go ahead and pull in some more real data. Great. Okay, so when you go into your plugin data, and in fact, here, let's create a couple more sample structures here. Okay, so you come on into Lord of the Rings Online /plugin data, and you're going to see one folder for each account in here. Underneath a account, you'll see one folder for each server, plus a meta one called all servers, and this is where your server account-wide storage is. So plugins like reminders that can show things across different servers, their stuff is going in here. And then you have server-specific ones, so we delve into that. Then you have one for each character, plus one called all characters, which is server-wide. And then you can delve into characters, and this is where all your character-specific save files are. And so whenever you rename a character or delete a character and recreate a character, you're doing things outside of what plugins deal with by default. When the game deletes a character, it doesn't come into the plugin data and delete the corresponding files there. When you rename a character, the game doesn't come into the plugin files and move files around. That's on us. And there's some tricks that plugin developers can take advantage of, but it's... Huh. I'm getting lots of chat. Is it because the Evernight's going down? Evernight's going to restart. Okay, well, that doesn't seem like any new information. Cool. Okay, so... yeah, when you log in, when a plugin is loaded, the plugin can say, hey, what is the name of the current character? But what we can't do is say, hey, what was our name before? And when you load files as a plugin, and you say, I want to load files for the current character, under the covers, the game's just saying, hey, what's the name of this character? Cool, that's the directory in which you're loading from. So... there's no good way for a plugin to know that your character's been renamed or that your character was deleted and recreated. Well, actually, on that one you could do, because if you save the last known level of the character and then they log in at a level lower than that, well, there's no mechanism to lower your level. So the plugin could say, hey, it looks like your character, something weird happened. What do you want to do about that? And then a plugin could make something for that. But I think for some plugin developers, it's just such a rare thing to want to rename or delete characters that it's just like, just do it yourself. So when you're moving stuff, from one character to another, one server to another, to one account to another, it's a pretty manual process. Because in the game, the plugins don't have a lot of access to that kind of thing. Amber says, just to clarify, I am working with one main and several alts. Cool. Well, I suspect what I was just saying, informative though it may have been, wasn't actually anything that will help you specifically, Ironbar, but there were thoughts that I had in my mind. Is that as plugin authors, there's not a lot we can do to deal with all of this. Okay, alts are on their own accounts but need both Poetical and Songbook. Yeah, totally. So let's take a look at what that would look like. So if we're in plugin data, oopsie. Let's say I have some alt accounts here, and I want to make sure that their configurations are the same between them. That can be pretty straightforward. It does depend where Songbook keeps its settings. It looks like there are some Songbook settings in all servers, which would make sense. Let's take a look at that. What's stored in there? Okay, that's just the general setting stuff. When you are synchronizing between accounts for these settings, every plugin is going to be different, but in general, plugins can save to the account-wide section, all servers, but they can also save to the server-wide stuff and then the character-specific ones. And so synchronizing your plugin settings between two different accounts means knowing all of the files that plugin is accessing. Now, a lot of plugins are pretty well behaved, so if we come into all servers, we can see most plugins are going to prefix the name of their save file with something that indicates which plugin it goes with. We can see MM for MoreMap here. We can see all the Prime stuff is prefixed with Prime, reminders, travel window 2. And so it's usually pretty straightforward to figure these out. As plugin authors, we can delve into the code and say, hey, where do you try to read or write this data from to be extra sure that we've caught them all. But the main thing is if I wanted to synchronize everything that was let's get an example. Everything that was travel window related, I'd want to make sure I found everything in all of those locations. Let's see. That's a lot of travel window files. So that was the all servers. If I come on in here to Treebeard and go to all characters, is there also a travel window? There is not, but there is Titan bar stuff. That's another good example. Let's see. Okay, so there's Titan bar at the all servers level. There's Titan bar at the all characters level. And is there Titan bar? Yeah, okay. So Titan bar is a great example of a plugin that makes use of all three of those levels, account-wide, server-wide, and character-specific. So if you're cloning a Titan bar configuration between two of these accounts, you want to make sure to get all of those. So in that case, this might look like coming in, make sure we have an all servers underneath your account. You'd probably have this already, but just as a demonstration, and then we'd come in and say, okay, anything that says Titan bar, great, Titan bar, and copy that over. Now, I would probably wrap this up in a batch file or something so that I can just click and it just goes and does it all, but you can always do it manually. Okay, we did all servers, now we need to come into Treebeard, and we're looking for that all characters. Cool. Come on in. All right, we found Titan bar. We would take everything that says Titan bar because we're doing a clone here. And then finally, we'd come on in and replicate the character level stuff. Affodil. and come on down and tighten bar. There we go. So that's a general cloning that you need to do if you're doing this manually. Remember, it says batch files are a bit outside my skill level. No problem. If you're only doing this one time or for a minimal number of synchronizations, then it's no problem. If I was trying to synchronize settings between my main account and 7 alt accounts, and I was trying to do that on a weekly basis, I would definitely want to script that up. But at this point, this test account B4142135565 now has a cloned Titan bar setup, because we have the account level stuff, we have these server level stuff, and we have the server specific, the character specific stuff. But we would want to do that for each character if there's more than one character on that server. And at that point, the plugin data files part of it is there. Now, the other thing that can happen is Lord of the Rings Online does not... I'm in a different place than I was thinking. Hang on a sec. Documents. So Lord of the Rings Online does not really care if you have the same plugin multiple times. Let's take a look at what that means. Let's go to the LOTRO plugin compendium. Have to click the right thing. And let's go ahead and install a plugin. So in this case, we can look for Songbook. Cool, add that. But if I forget and I have a second copy of it, or if I have Songbook and also the BB Songbook, the game doesn't check on that, and so you can, as long as the entries, the names to be in this list here are unique, they can show up multiple times, and so with the BB version of Songbook. And with the regular version of Songbook installed, I could very much believe that you could have both of them loaded at the same time. It's been a while since I have tried that, and I'm not in a good place to actually set that up, as it turns out. I was going to replicate it, but that's harder. Anyway, so you had mentioned seeing multiple icons for the plugin. I would check to see if you have regular Songbook and Songbook BB installed. Because the game's going to let you have both of them installed and turned on at the same time. It's not going to have any sort of internal check that says, "Oh no, that's not what you actually meant to do." Flinder Hunches, good evening. And yes, Flinder Hunches comments that Evernight has gone down. Yes, it looks like there was a tweet that went out saying that they were taking it down to restart the server. So I think it is going to be coming back soon. Thunder Hinges has seen it. Excellent. Okay. So we were just talking about some of the difficulties that come into play when you're trying to synchronize plugin settings between accounts or between servers. Aaron says, what are they trying to do with the restart? I don't actually know what their goal is, but MMOs, just like many technologically related things in life, sometimes just work better if you turn them off and on again. I couldn't speak to the specifics of that. Okay. Little Redhead has put the contents of that tweet in, saying Evernight will undergo a restart on Tuesday, November 14th, starting at 2:15 p.m. Eastern, to address game world instability. Fantastic. And Brett says, if only life were like that. Well, a lot of times, if your body's behaving, sleeping and then waking up again is a little like turning yourself off and on again. And for some people, it does wonders. I've got a reasonable amount of space in my inventory. I was poking fun at Little Redhead for having a full inventory. So this is how I like to run. Like when I reset at the end of the day, it looks like that. Okay, awesome. Let's take a look at where we are. So when we left off last time, we were working on the Festival Buddy plugin. Thunderhead says, yes, I just saw it indeed, but I always have to count what time it is here in the EU. Absolutely. In general, when we're not in the middle of daylight saving time transition period, I remember that I'm 6 hours ahead of Eastern time in the US. And so I like having the Titan Bar plugin to help with that. Let's go ahead and see how that works for those of us that have time zone issues. So I've gone ahead and installed the Titan Bar plugin. We're going to come into Plugin Manager. Remember, if you're running the game and you install or remove plugins, hit the green circle here to refresh the list. The LOTRO client is not checking on that behind the scenes. You have to tell it, oh yes, that's changed. Okay, so Titan Bar allows you to have settings for the time display up here. I like showing it in 24-hour time. I like the lack of ambiguity. And we can also show the server time. And real time. Let's see, show real time. And we can say, what is the server time? Well, probably -5. Let's try that. That is not enough. Okay. And when in doubt, I'll do something like a web search for current time zone New York, and that will tell me, oh, it's GMT5, which would suggest that this isn't taking into account daylight saving time, but importantly, current time New York, 1430. So whatever I have to type into here to get server time 1434 out of here, that's the important thing. And so now I've got Titan Bar set up so that at a glance I can see, okay, right now clock time it's 2035 and server time it's 1435. So if you are a person who is not in the Eastern time zone of the United States, you might find this very handy as just a quick little, okay, they're talking about 2:30 or 14:30 on the Twitter. What is that? Okay, I've got it. This will give inaccuracies during those parts of the year where the EU and the US are switching daylight saving times, but not at the same time. So this year, EU went first, and then US followed up a week later. And during that period, it will give you incorrect information because it will not. I mean, daylight saving time, when it changes each year for each region, is kind of feels random. It's a little bit organized, but some places are pretty good about, oh, it's always the last weekend of October or the first weekend of November or whatever. And some places will just do it by government decree a month ahead of time. So EU and US are pretty stable, but I don't think there's too many plugins that try to incorporate whatever rules there are into their time management. So just be aware, it can be inaccurate, but you can also do a /server time command, and a plugin could pay attention to the output of that as well to try and figure out, okay, what time is it there? And so you can see the current time on the server is 2:36 p.m. Great. And the time on my machine is 8:36 p.m. Great. So those correlate with the numbers up here. Everything is good. Thunderhead just says, thank you, that is helpful. Yeah, I find it very helpful to have that reference. That's one of the things I probably actively use Titan Bar the most for, is just a handy-dandy reference up here of what time is it. Because if you hover over this clock, it'll spit it out, but it's in 12-hour time, not 24-hour time, which I'm not as used to reading. And it's got the date there, which prefixes it, which generally I'm not looking at the clock there to figure out what day it is. And so it's extra information. Aaron Bart says, what were those two commands again, please, to see the 2 times, there is a slash time for yours. Sorry, I'm trying to type it into Twitch, and Twitch is rejecting. Okay, so that was slash server time and slash time. Forward slash, of course. And those will spit out those pieces of information. So you can do it that way. You can also just, and slash server time is the time at which they do things like bring the servers down for maintenance, bring them back up. Server resets for quests is at 3 a.m. server time. So anytime you're dealing with time zones, you're not in the Eastern U.S., knowing what time the server thinks it is very handy. Here in Central European time zones, a 3 a.m. quest reset time is 9 a.m. here, so it's very possible, and that's when you get more blue bar for experience. That's in any of the dailies reset, so it's quite possible to do something in the morning when you first get up. You know, go turn in some tasks, go do some instances, whatever, and then come back an hour later, and you can do them all over again because your task count has reset at 9 a.m. Cool. So, let's take a look at Festival Buddy 2. Where were we? Interesting. We have an error message. But why do we have an error message? Well, when in doubt, dig into the code. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to the Festival Buddy source in here. One of the things I want to do over time is to split out these plugins into different repositories, but the repositories are in situ. They're all in the plugins folder in Lord of the Rings Online. And I know it's possible to have multiple Git repositories in the same location. You just have to work around it because by default a Git repository will have a .git folder where it stores all of its information. And you can't have multiple repositories right in the same place. It would be chaos and also would not work. So, minimized icons. What are we up to? Festival Buddy 2 minimized icon. Table.insert. Table expected got function. Okay. Does this have to do with... Well, I was worried that the... Let's see, insert. I was worried something about this display size listener would be coming into play. Oh. Oh, that's interesting. Minimized icon was caring about turbine display size changed. Well, that's reasonable, but now we have a whole thing. Let's take a look into that. So, we're now using the add callback functionality on this turbine.ui display size changed. So we want to come into minimized icon and have it do the same thing. So instead of checking to see if this thing is null, well, we should actually see what order we're getting these things in. So minimized, oh, that's like last. That's no problem. So what we want it to look like is more like this. So we're going to add a callback, no size changed. Instead of calling table insert, we'll use the add callback function to take care of it. And we won't need to check for null anymore. Fantastic. Okay, so what we were working on last time was the window scaling feature. Now, this is not the same as making a window that is resizable that will change all the font sizes and whatever, but fonts are tricky in LOTRO plugins, and so just scaling everything up can often be good enough. So we made sure that we couldn't make the window bigger than the client window itself. We made sure that as we were increasing the size, it wouldn't go off the screen. Great. And we were checking to see if we could respond to the window resizes. What else were we doing? Apparently, we were being very sloppy about making commits. And that's sad. Okay, so we're going to be committing some of the changes we did last time and maybe discussing what was good or what was bad about them as we look at them. This is kind of functions as a code review because it's been a week since I wrote the code, so I don't remember what I was thinking. So if I can't tell what the code is trying to do as I read it, that's a good sign that maybe it's not written well or maybe it's not commented very well. And this gives us a chance to come back to it and say, hey, can we make this better? Or possibly introduce breaking changes. Okay. And we have a to-do file which has some thoughts. Does it also detect changing from windowed to full screen windowed? And we need to do something in the options window to update. Okay, yes. Oh, and then there was a question of, can we introduce a system that allows us to pretend to resize the window, but actually be scaling the window? I think that's really interesting. We may just only do scaling stuff today and not actually do Harvestmath stuff at all, which is fine. Harvestmath is done. Cool. Okay. Let's start by getting a clean working directory. If we start working now, it's going to be very hard to untangle what we did today versus what we did last week. It's just a hassle. So let's do what we can. So first of all, some of this is pretty easy. Like on screen is being moved into the libraries folder. So we can just do that as its own commit. Moved on screen library into library folder. And when you are working with a modern source control program, it's going to understand that a delete and a creation could very well be the same file. Now in this case, we also changed the file enough that it's not detecting that. Well, we can deal with that. We can separate this out. Now the easiest way to do that is just, it's a small file. We'll come on in here, save all of that somewhere. We're just going to get rid of that comment and this thing at the end here, and then come back in and say, okay, we deleted one, we created one, the contents are identical, therefore it was a move. And that's really useful in a source control, because if it knows a file moved instead of being one deleted and the next created, then it can keep a consistent history for that file. And you can see how that file has changed even before it was named what it was currently named. As long as it was identified as a rename or as a move instead of as a delete and a new file. New file history. So getting these paired up is really beneficial for those times when you want to see how did this file change over time. So we moved it, and then we're going to come back in and put those changes back. Okay, so added comment block and global reference for on screen. Super easy. Okay, let's get that to do file changes. LOTRO says, as a starting developer, that's a very useful tip. Cool. Yeah. When I first got into my career as a software developer, this was long ago, and our current distributed source control systems didn't exist in possibly at all. And so using tools like Mercurial or GitHub, or sorry, Git with GitHub Cloud backing, these are really, really love ways to work. And I feel like I should be using them more in my day-to-day life. For instance, I've been doing some transcription of some sheet music using a textual format and a program called LilyPond, which takes textual notation and produces a PDF of sheet music, and it looks very nice. And sometimes I really wish I was using source control in a way that I could be like, okay, everything's working now. Now I'm going to introduce a Volta, and I'm going to break something. I know it. I want to have a save point, and I've been lazy and haven't started that up, but I want to because that would make life a little bit easier. Okay, so we can see we are moving. Oh yes, removed duplicate on-screen function. Perfect. Okay. Oh, this was part of the move. Moved on-screen library. All right, this display size listener. Am I ready to commit that? Yeah, sure. But these general callback functionalities. How are we using them? We already had an add callback, didn't we? Fantastic. Let's take a look at that. Oh, that's funny. Did Garen originally publish that? We're going to take a look at... Oh, not the minimized icon. We want the display size listener. Let's take a look at this. Add callback, object event callback. You know, these are probably similar enough that I don't need to worry about that. Do I care about the remove callback? I don't think I do. And do I care about... what was the point of the add callback here without a do callback? Okay, let's see how this is being used. Why was this thing here? For dropdown? Okay, for dropdown. I'm mystified why there's an add callback functionality, but not a do callback functionality. And that makes me want to go see if Garen had other things. And what plugins did Garen do? Lord Zach says hello. Hello. We're just going to take a look and see if Garen had a library for this stuff. I'm going to come into Alt Inventory and check out if it comes with utilities that maybe this was yanked from. Or possibly more map. Interesting. So, sometimes the easiest thing to do is just do a search. So, we're going to go ahead and search for add, callback, and we're going to go just do it recursively within these. So, we're going to come into Alt Inventory and select that. Just show it. Great. Alright, so Alt Inventory has it in main. Has an add, has a remove. Cool, but no do callback. Fascinating. And the main form map also has add callback and remove callback, which is fascinating to me because where are these called? I don't know. It's quite possible that these are being used on controls that where the LOTRO client is itself what is causing these callbacks, and it might know how to do the multiple dispatch thing, and so they're not trying to trigger these callbacks, they're just trying to have multiple things subscribed for them. Yeah, exactly, Lord Zach. Zach, more map, but not just for more anymore. Well, the Redhead would like a plugin called Less Map. Just for symmetry. Well, that's fair enough. Okay, so what are we looking at? We're looking at a do callback, which is seeing, oh, okay, is this thing a function? Cool, do the callback. Otherwise, is it a table? Oh, the other place I was going to look is the turbines plugin folder. Let me take a look at that. Okay, so in Turbine, we also had event stuff. Why are you misbehaving? And in here is a fire version, which is a lot like the do. So, If it's a function, assign it. If it's a table, do that, and then iterate through. And for each one, if it's a function, invoke the function. It all makes sense. Why are we not using this more generally? Lord Zach says, Sunday you were playing and he closed the game because it was too laggy. That's unfortunate. Yeah, it definitely feels like sometimes when there's a lot more people on a server, like on a weekend or a holiday, that we're definitely competing for some resources. Okay, so I think it is reasonable for these things to get hoisted into the add callback. And what I would do is actually come on in and say, instead of add callback, we're going to go ahead and rename that to be callback.lua. We just need to remember to come on into main and fix that. And then in callback, we're going to go ahead and hoist out all of these. I just realized we're going to want those higher up, I think. Okay, attribution retained. Attribution retained. And then what we just want to do, make sure, convince ourselves that these two are functionally identical for what we're looking for. Now, what I was saying before is we want to make sure add callback is, I'm going to say anything that's in libraries should be higher up than anything that is not in libraries. But I'm going to keep the relative order the same, just in case. Hey, everything loaded, that's good. Okay, so we're coming back in, and we have add callback. And we have an extra check here if object is nil. But after that, if that's nil callback, it's table. This tries to check if it's in the table. And if it's not there, it inserts it. I don't know if that's useful. I don't know what happens when you insert the same thing into a table. And when I don't know how something works, sometimes I like to just test it. So we're going to go ahead and say testing. So local my table equals, we're going to make an empty table. And we're going to go ahead and call, what was it, insert? Table.insert my table and whatever we're putting in there. First thing. So we can go ahead and do some outputs. So turbine.load shell.writeLine and say my table, and then just dump my table in. Okay, so let's see that we understand how the insert function works. It was empty, and then we have a first thing. Awesome. So let's insert the same thing and see what happens again. Actually, let's insert another thing. And then the first thing again. Okay, so we have an empty table. We have a first thing, we have second thing, and we can see first thing went in again. Okay, so that's the problem, is because we're not using a key, we're just getting an auto incremented number. Inserting the same thing multiple times means it will get called multiple times. Is this a problem? Yeah, I mean, maybe don't register for the same event multiple times if you don't want it to get called multiple times, but we can prevent it from being an issue. Lutheran says, the game behaves weirdly. From time to time, I was having some crazy FPS drops in the swamp area of Swanfleet, and I got a consistent 20 to 30 FPS increase from disabling the 3D portraits. Interesting. I wouldn't expect 3D portraits by themselves should be that computationally expensive. But yeah, one thing that is always worth trying, in the vein of turning it off and on again, is you can always come to your display options and then just drop them down to very low and accept that, and then come on in and pop them back to whatever your normal thing is. And by turning everything to a different setting and back to the original setting, that can sometimes resolve weirdness as well. Lord Zach says, am I the only one that wants a new Hitbolt? I think Hitbolt's really interesting. It's really annoying for trying to document what changes what quests change what images for the wiki, but I like the incremental rebuild of Hitbolt. I wish more of the game took advantage of the idea of different people see different things based off of their progress through quests. And obviously we get that a lot with location and perhaps appearance of quest NPCs. But I feel like the world would feel like we were impacting it more if more of the world responded to changes like Hitbolt does. Fizzle in chat asks, do the AMD processors, X3D processors, have huge gains in frames per second in LOTRO like it does for other MMOs? I couldn't tell you. I don't have one of those. I can tell you that right now, well, I can tell you that right now, sitting here while streaming and recording the stream onto my hard drive, and just standing here, that I'm getting about 120 frames per second, which is technically beyond what the human eye can differentiate. So, like 60 of those frames per second that it's doing are just churning through and not doing anything useful. Now I'm just standing still in Hitbolt, so that's not really a fair number, but just standing here, even if there was a processor that would increase that frame rate, my human squishy meat eye would not be able to detect that increase in frame rate. So, so I guess the answer is I don't know, and I don't know how I would be able to tell other than the number would look higher. Fresh says, I understand nothing about programming and what you were doing, but I enjoy listening to you and follow along in any way. Well, welcome. Yeah, you definitely don't have to be a programmer to be here. Everyone gets to have their own motivations, and I'm glad you have one. Thanks for your effort, and I'll surely steal the add-on when you're done. Awesome. Yeah, the Festival Buddy plugin is not originally mine. This was done by Garen, I believe? Galahad, sorry. Other G. Galahad did the initial work on this. I've just been trying to bring it up to date with some of the more recent festival editions. Okay. Anyway, under the covers, Fizzle in chat, LOTRO, I believe, makes use of things like DirectX. So anything that improves things that use DirectX would also improve LOTRO, I would expect. However, I am not an SSG employee. Just to point that out, I don't have any inside information about all this. This is speculation on my part. Fizzle says, other games had 30 plus frames per second gains going from one of these things to another of these things. I'm used to thinking of AMDs as being processors and not graphics cards, and so I wouldn't have expected a processor change to have that much of an impact, but compared to like a GPU change, but cool. Maybe AMD is also doing graphics cards. Neat. Obviously, your mileage will vary depending on how sensitive your eyes are, but once a game is going well beyond 30 frames per second, I don't have a lot of ability to discern whether it's 50 or it's 60 or it's 100. It's too fast for my eye to make out. Now, what is nice is from a plugin developer perspective is that your frame rate is also determining how fast the update function on any of your controls is being called, because I believe we get an update on each control that wants it every frame that gets rendered. And so the faster frames can get rendered, the snappier your plugin can be. Now, the danger is if you're getting like 200 frames per second and your plugin is doing some expensive calculation, then you don't want that to be happening in your update loop. And so one of the first things I'll do when I'm writing my update handler is to consider, is this going to run more than once? And if it is, do I want to check and maybe only care every 10th of a second, every 20th of a second even? I don't need to know every 1,000th of a second. So that's the thing that we definitely want to keep in mind as plugin developers. If we take a look for update. Yeah, so here's an example of an update handler that immediately after update is called, we say set once updates to false, because you don't want to just churn on that. There was another one in I think the maze map win. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, so in this update function, the first thing we do is say, hey, how long has it been since the last time we did this? Oh, that's a different update function. There we go. How long has it been since the last time we did this? And if it's more than some sort of delay, then go ahead and do the thing. So if it's been more than 15 seconds, do a thing. So we want to be notified, but with Lord of the Rings Online, the updates are either every frame, or every time we can, or never. And so it's on us to write our own code to say how often. Oh, hey, Evernight has been reopened, says Little Redhead quoting Twitter. Cool. For anyone who's on Evernight, success. And Aaron Bard says, have to dash, thanks for the help. Bye all. So long. Okay, so yeah, this is an example of how we can govern ourselves so we don't just churn unnecessarily doing more complicated computations. We go ahead and get the current time. That's a very short operation. This is an integer, so we're just getting an integer. No, sorry, not an integer, floating point number. And then we are comparing, we're doing a little bit of math here, which is going to be pretty straightforward. And then only if that math checks out do we then do the more computationally expensive stuff. And that lets us limit ourselves to whatever rate we want to do. Once a second, once an hour, whatever. Lord Zach says, once I hit 150, I might as well remove difficulty, right? Currently, the only things where landscape difficulty matters is that there are 4 deeds, 2 of which that are awarded when you hit level 50, and 2 that when you hit level 130. And you qualify for these deeds at level 10 or below when you get your landscape deed from the Hardened Traveler. And so if you pick up 3 or higher, you opt into all 4 of those deeds. And as long as you never drop below that, those deeds can be completed. If you drop below that, those deeds are canceled and you can't ever get them again. There's nothing observable that we've seen yet that gives you any benefit to keeping your landscape difficulty after level 130. I don't know that I'll have the guts to drop below on my main character, but as far as we know, good point. Little Redhead points out the tokens of heroism will keep on dropping as long as you have landscape difficulty. If you've maxed out your reputation with the such and such people, the Path of Valor, if you've maxed out your reputation with the Path of Valor, and you've purchased all the things that you want from them using your tokens, then I can't see any downside that we have been told about for dropping your landscape difficulty below 3. I don't imagine they would hide something in there and be like, hee, we'll penalize them if they drop below. But it's entirely possible for the game to track, to know whether or not you've ever dropped below level 3, for instance, separate from the presence of those deeds. I don't know if they've done that. I don't know why they would do that. And since I'm on Treebeard, I have a couple years lag after everyone else. So by the time we hit 130 on here, I'll feel very confident that we will know if there's any other benefits to keeping landscape difficulty. But for you all who are playing on standard servers, you don't get that that lag benefit, that delay benefit. Yeah, so if you are done with the Paths of Valor, if you've bought everything you want from the Paths of Valor barter vendor, the Hardened Traveler, and if you have crossed the 130 threshold, then I see no reason why you couldn't drop down to 0 landscape difficulty with no downside.
Unless they're gonna make
Lord Zach says, I haven't been getting the tokens on my 145 because I'm still in level 142 to 143 content. I gotta tell you, and this is not specifically for landscape difficulty, but just in general, the Stone of the Tortoise is very handy. Is it so handy that it's still in my inventory? That's funny. Well, why not? It deserves a place there. Stone of the Tortoise is an inexpensive purchase from the LOTRO store, which disables XP gains, and it can be a very handy... oh, you have the stone on an alt? Yeah, unfortunately, it is bound to the character that you purchase on, so you can't share it across the server. But the ability to say, I will not level up until the things I'm fighting level up is very handy for me, because I find experience comes a lot easier in Lord of the Rings Online, and I will out-level an area very, very quickly if I'm not careful. At least that's the case on like lower than level 100 stuff. I haven't spent a lot of time above level 100. Oh, good point. Little Redhead says, when you purchase the stone, it is bound to a count. It's not until you actually equip it on a character. So you can buy it on a different character, but once you equip it, it's bound to a character, just like any other piece of equipment that you pick up off the ground or whatnot. So this one, obviously, I have used, so it's bound to Affodil. They're not that expensive, though, and definitely worth it if you want to keep your character level in range of the things that you're fighting. Because I've had that on other characters where doing all the quests and defeating lots of things in the area, and suddenly I'm level 20 in the Shire or something, and it feels a little silly. Lord Zach says, a wild red has been spotted. Yeah, the layout of our house has their desk, the Little Redhead's desk over there, and the kitchen over there. So, okay, so we have seen good evidence of why this extra code exists in the current version of this callback. So add callback. Didn't check for object equal to nil. You shouldn't call it if it is nil, but whatever. And then within here, this doesn't check for the existence of the callback in the function. So let's take a look at how this code works as well. So we're going to lift that in. And we're going to make our own little function here. So function add me takes a table object, sure, and thing. Cool. So we're gonna move all this code in here, and thing is callback. We're not gonna bother with event there. What's up with that? Oh, sure. Add to table. Okay, so if he equals thing, then So instead of doing table insert, we're going to go ahead and call add to table. So unload that, reload that, and we can see we get the first thing, we get the second thing, but we don't get the duplicate of the first thing. And so we're getting that behavior that we're expected. In fact, we can even say, right line, found a duplicate thing, skipping, adding it. And we'll just say what thing is. Okay, so found a duplicate thing, skipping, adding it, first thing. Very cool. So, we've just been adding strings here, but we're actually going to be adding functions, and that's going to feel more like a table. So let's go ahead and say add just a table here and see how that behaves. So local table 1 equals first thing. I should say thing. Cool, and then we have 2, which is second thing. Okay, so we're going to add in first thing, and first thing again, and second thing. So we're going to switch back to table.insert object thing, because I want an easy way to swap behavior here. Okay, let's take a look at that. So as we're adding things in, the first thing is we get a table, awesome, second thing, and then that other table came on in here. But what we want is to see, does this work on more complicated things that aren't just strings? Okay, that didn't work. 56. Of course, I needed to dump this as well. Okay, so what do we have here? We have my table, for the first thing, second thing, and we found a duplicate thing, skipping, adding it. Now, the real question is it doing that based off of like an underlying address here? Because we can actually take a look at that. So first thing, if we just concatenate the thing 1 here and the thing 2, oops. Table value. I know it's a table value. I want the address of it. Oh well. Okay. Fine. I won't play around with that. But the one thing I will do is to say, what if instead of adding it by reference, we can go ahead and just paste that in. We'll detect that those are different. Okay. We have added first, second, and first thing again. So it definitely appears to be not caring about the contents of the table, but the fact that they were basically pointers to the same table. You added the same thing twice. And that's fine for our purposes because we are adding a function, and you're unlikely to do an identical function in an anonymous function. You're unlikely to pass that twice? I don't know. Lord Zach, this is Dr. Seuss plugin. Yeah, you know. 1 int, 2 int, red int, blue int. Okay, so we have a better sense of what this is doing here. Why is it here? You know what would be even better? If it was documented. So let's take a look at that. make sure this callback isn't already in the hasn't already been added. Okay, so we're gonna hoist that out. Okay, so we have look like this equals false. For these in there. If the thing equals the callback is EC true break. Okay, if not that, then insert. Cool. And then incorporated from Garen's version. Awesome. At that point, I feel pretty good about removing this version of callback. And we have ourselves an add callback, a remove callback, and a do callbacks all in one place. Okay, awesome. Well, we don't need any of this testing thing, but that's what source control is for. So we're going to come on in and kill this part. Reordered imports to do libraries first. Okay, what else do we have? We have the display size listener. And foolishly, I forgot to actually do the rename first, so we're going to want to do that. So let's come on in here. In callback, we're going to go ahead and paste that. We've identified, oops. It's properly identified that this is a rename. We can see with the purple. Renamed, no, hey. Callbacks, library file. And then we can come back in here and replace it with our updated text. Now, ideally, we can see we had just add callback. Now we also have everything else. Added, remove, callback, and do callbacks functions for lore. Okay. Now, those are in place. We're back to the display size listener. This has do callbacks. It also has, maybe it only has do callbacks. Callback. Yep, okay. It depends on everything else using the add callbacks. Okay, so we have do callbacks for size changed on Turbine UI display. Cool. So, added display size listener library. Okay. So, getting simpler. The number of changes outstanding that we did last time are getting reduced, and we're having a better understanding of what happened. Perfect. What's going on in the maze map win? Okay, so we can see that there was a nil exception. Quest details.map is not always present, and so we want to make sure that we're only doing this calculation if there's a map to do the calculation on. Okay. Cool. Added check for nil quest details dot map. Fork, the utility that I'm using that wraps around the Git repository, also has options to say ignore white space, and that can be a nice way to get a sense of what's changing that's not just indentation within here. But sometimes it's nice to just pop out to another program to do it. Okay, fixed. How screen size change callback is added. So this is, again, we can add a semicolon there. That sounds good. We're not checking to see if that is nil. We're just calling add callback. That itself will deal with it. Okay, we have strings. That's for scaling. Option stuff is scaling as well. Oh yes, the scaling for the main window. Great. So we're setting the stretch mode to 1. We're calling redraw, and that will deal with that. And we're want to be aware when the window changes size. Perfect. Ifrin says, a random question. What plugin that you've created are you most proud of? So, I haven't created as many plugins as I have worked on. Because sometimes it's just fun to get in and make some changes. Remember me. Really? What's going on here? But I want you to log me in. Okay, sure. Yeah, sometimes it's just fun to go in and fix other people's or tweak other people's plugins. You don't have to write something from the ground up. You can get a lot of experience modifying someone else's stuff. And so I actually started with the Minstrel Buff plugin because, yeah, tweaking someone else's plugin to do a little bit more of what I wanted was way easier than writing a plugin kind of from scratch. But dtracker is probably the one that I am most invested in because as a completionist person, cool blue, I do not want your advertisement. As a completionist person, it was driving me bonkers over on the Bombadil server to try to figure out which deeds had I completed, which ones still existed. Oh, there's these hidden deeds. Oh, but this deed has a minimum level, whatever. It was too much. And so the dtracker plugin, I'm very happy with that. I don't spend nearly as much time on it as I should because I keep getting distracted by other shiny plugins. So probably the dtracker plugin. If you're a minstrel, you, like me, might find the Minstrel Buff plugin very, very useful. But I think other people have other plugin solutions for that. Whereas dtracker, there's not really another plugin that does what dtracker does, except maybe the LOTRO compendium. I haven't tried to use that. And Little Redhead says, I'm guessing you want to say dtracker, but it'll be Opaque Quest Tracker. Opaque Quest Tracker with 17,000 downloads is just a box that you can put behind your quest area so that you can read your quest text better. If you have visibility concerns, sometimes that text is very hard to read. So for instance, hey, there's a goose behind all your quests, but that's okay. There's an opaque quest tracker between you and it, so you can still read your quest text. Neat. Back when Treebeards was at Mines of Moria, so I was sitting in the 21st hall. So that, as far as accessibility is concerns, that was very satisfying to make. make playing just a little bit easier for some people. But as far as technical difficulty goes, I think the deed tracker is just this sprawling weirdness thing, and yeah, probably deed tracker. But that being said, I didn't write the deed tracker from scratch. I took an existing plugin, the Hidbolt Assistant by probably Galahad, and just started modifying it to do what I wanted it to do. And in some sense, that was really useful because it meant I didn't have to learn all the parts of plugin development at the same time. I could just piggyback on top of what they had already done. But it definitely means that there's some stuff in there that is only there because it was a mutation of an existing plugin. And if I had written it from scratch, maybe this bug here or that issue there wouldn't have been a part of it. Lord Zach says, the goose needs a knife. What makes you think the goose doesn't have a knife? So yeah, check it out. If you haven't seen it already, the Deed Tracker plugin, it automatically detects when you complete deeds. It checks them off for you. It shows them in a hierarchical perspective, so you can see, oh, Explorer of the Shire requires Farms of the Shire and Sites of the Shire. And there are tooltips that you can enable. I think the experimental ones will have that where you can integrate with the Waypoint plugin, and if you need help finding a thing, you just click on the arrow and it'll guide you there. Luthrith, says, nice, yeah, never try to reinvent the wheel. Some wheels should be reinvented, or at least it's very helpful to go through the process of making a wheel to understand why wheels are the way they are. Oh no, Lord Zek says, speaking of new deeds, they made it even worse. Whenever I get pop-up of new deed, it opens the old Gondor page. That's interesting. So you're saying whenever you get a pop-up of a new deed in, say, I don't have them here. Where is it? Deed tracker. So whenever you're in, say, Losanark and Eastern King Gondor, it opens up the Eastern Gondor page instead. The detracker, not mine. Yeah, mine doesn't have a quite the same thing. That's probably something that they're going to fix, I would imagine. I would suspect that just like my development practices, some people, when they're doing like a whole new area like this, will do a copy paste, right? Like, we're going to copy this, we're going to paste it over here, and then we're going to change the things. And if you don't remember to change everything, then the page that you're opening when you click the link flag maybe doesn't get updated. Or maybe an image doesn't get updated, for instance. So I could definitely believe that could have happened. I do think it's funny that Instances has continued to wrap around, so now we have 2 tabs on the side. Not sure if there's ever a good solution for that, but it does look funny. How's Eriador? Still just the one. Maybe it's fine. Okay. Yeah. Fun question, Luthrith. All right, so we still have a few outstanding changes. Let's zip through them, and then we'll be done with reviewing all the things we did last week to see if we like them or not. So we have some globals for the main window width and height. We use them, and we have a stretch mode, and we have a redraw function that redraws the window based off of that. Awesome. Main window respects can be stretched. So far, I like both of these. In the options window, we have a draw man window scaling. Sure should have been mained, I think. Let's come on in and fix that. This is why we do code reviews. Man window. Okay, draw main window scaling. Fantastic. In which we do a lot of almost formulaic stuff to sort out information. One of our challenges with scaling is that we're only currently storing the width of the screen or percentage in terms of width and not in terms of width and height. And that was a shortcut, and maybe it's not a valid shortcut, but it's definitely a thing that could be improved upon, where you store both the percentages of width and height, and then when the screen resolution changes, you kind of try to sort out which one of those is the more relevant one. So if you stored the old dimensions, the old width and height, 1920 by 1080 for instance, then based off of the new one, you could tell which dimension got squished more proportional to the other. So we gained more height, or we gained more width, or we lost more height, we lost more width. And based off of that, you could choose which of those two stored values to base the scaling off of. Oh, we lost more height than width proportionally, then we should scale our height down. But that sounds like a lot of work, and I'm not actually sure what the general use case of the changing of the scaling of the resolution is, the change in the resolution is, but I don't know. Does it either go from a full width to like a half width, like you just change that and expect that to do something reasonable? I don't know. I am in full screen windowed mode all the time anyway, because I can work with other things and I have a second monitor. So changing the resolution is a thing that I'm looking to support for other people, but doesn't affect me very much. Okay, so we have a to-do open in there. That's fine. And a main window scaling that text. Awesome. Added option to stretch main window. Cool. Well, we're going to push those out. Okay. Well, after doing that review, doing those code fixes, incorporating those changes, discussing a plugin and non-plugin stuff, we've actually are rapidly approaching kind of the normal ending point of this stream. So we're going to do a few more things here and then push off the Harvestmath improvements for another day and prepping for Yule. Okay. So we had a question. Does detecting resolution change also just detect going from windowed to full screen, or is it detecting like the dragging the edge and changing the window size? Let's find out. In here, display size listener update, do callbacks. We can say turbine.shell.writeLine, screen resolution changed. Now, okay, so this get width. I'm not sure X is the right thing to use here, but this is also very temporary. Okay, so if we comment in and go to options and we just change from full screen windowed to windowed, okay, we get 1904 by 101. Do you want to keep that? No. 1920 by 1080. Good news, it does detect it. Detects, adds a mechanism to detect screen game client resolution changes. Calls triggers dot size changed each time. Okay, cool. So, just documenting, it detects resizing a windowed client, and it detects switching between windowed and full screens. Perfect. We no longer need that output statement, debug statement, and we can come on back and say, does it also detect changing from windowed to full screen? Yes. Options window needs to update. We have a to-do item there, and then rescaling can, oh yes, I was interested in that. I don't actually, that one is kind of interesting to me. We might do that one first. Determined that display size listener works. Documented how display size listener works. A bit more. Okay, so I was using the travel window the other day, and I noticed it does something that is similar to what I'm interested in. So, do we have it installed? We do not. So, let's go to the plugin compendium. And we're going to add in travel window 2. And we'll go ahead and refresh and load it on up. Okay, so travel window 2. When you hover over the bottom right corner of this window, there is a something there. And when you do it, it relays out everything that's here. Oh, that was a thing I was curious about. We're relaying out everything that's here, and I'm curious what happens if you don't do that, because it feels like there's a bit of a performance hit when you do it. So we're going to come on into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, and get distracted. Why not? Come on into Travel Window 2, and we're going to go ahead and open it with Visual Studio Code. Okay. So, what is it that does that? That's a good question. We know we're in the grid view. So let's travel grid tab. This is a window for the icon grid tab of the travel UI. Cool. Size changed. Nope. Can we do a right click? We can do a right click. Cool. Probably should have written down what I was. Okay, so set size. It says reset all the quick slots of the tab. What happens if we don't do that? I was a little curious about that. Okay, we can see some other stuff's happening with that transparency that I find very interesting. Well, we are setting opacity. What happens if we don't do that? Something else is going on strange there. Okay, fascinating. So if you are the kind of person who likes to resize your travel window, but don't really like the lag that or the computational load of it relaying out everything in here with every pixel that you move, come on in to travelgridtab.lua and just comment out this self set items. Or you could be a little bit more complicated and do that same thing where we're only going to update every so often. All right, this is travel grid tab. Okay, we're gonna come in and say self dot last redraw time equals, and we're just gonna set that to 0. Okay, so in here we can say if turbine.engine.game get game time. Sure. It's greater than the self.last redraw time plus, let's just say 1 second. Then we'll redraw that once a second. And then we need to go ahead and say self.last redraw time equals this value. And we can hoist that out. Local game time equals that. So go ahead and sign that. And again, that's that self-throttling thing where we can, well, maybe. The actual layout process is kind of a delayed process on my computer. So even that is a little rough, but you could do it. However, personally, I would just say comment it all out. And call it a day. And then it won't redraw as you're moving it, but it will relay up everything once you're done moving, after you've released. But this little something over the bottom right is kind of what I had in mind for the Festival Buddy plugin. So we do want to keep in mind that same idea is that we don't want to do anything computationally expensive if we can avoid it, but the stretching doesn't seem to be too bad. Because we're not doing a bunch of layouts, it's just it's a rendering thing. So maybe we can tolerate that. And if that's the case, let's come into the main window and see what it would take to do something like that. And so right now, our main window, there's nothing over the bottom right. And you can't resize the window. So let's start by just drawing a control over there and seeing if we can intercept that mouse button. All right, so we have a draw main win. Great. At the end of this, we're going to say draw resize thumb. And that's going to be our own function. And that's going to make a control. So we're going to make a local turbine.ui.control. First thing we need to do is parent it. And that's going to go into the main window here, wMainWin parent. We also need to set a size. Set size, and we're going to just start with like 10 pixels by 10 pixels. And we're going to set the position to be 10 pixels from the right and 10 pixels from the bottom. So we want that to be wMainWin parent get height, width, minus, and we already need variables. So local thumb width equals 10, local thumb height equals 10. Just don't use magic numbers when you can avoid it. And same thing, we're going to use that here as well. So set position, oh, I said set position. So we're going to need both of those. So w main win parent, get height minus thumb height. Now, so that we can see it, let's go ahead and say thumb set back color. And we're going to set that just, turbine.ui.color.something. How about, dark turquoise. Now that's it. Okay, we can see the things there. Also, not nearly big enough. We wanted to cover kind of this whole area back there. 20 is still a little shy. Let's check out 30. Awesome. Okay. We know it's there. Second question, can we tell if you've clicked on it? So we want thumb.click, mouse click equals function, sender args, end, turbine.shell.writeLine, clicked. Okay, we can indeed see clicked. What we really want is the drag function. So drag drop, drag enter, drag leave, drag start. Drag start sounds great. And again, we just want to know that something is happening. So drag start. This is going to be mouse click. And we can get a general sense of what functions we're looking for by consulting the API. So we're in turbine.ui.control, and we want to come into, oops. Yeah, so we have click, there's double click, which is multiple clicks. Down, enter, hover, leave, move. There's also drag, drop, enter, leave, start. Okay. So we want to know when the drag starts. We want to know, what's the drag move? There's a mouse move. Okay, let's get a mouse move in here. And let's actually put it right next to the mouse click. Okay, so we should see a mouse move anytime we're moving over it. We should see the click when we release. I'm not seeing the drag start, and that makes sense because that's for something that can be click and dragged. So that's not where we want. So we want, instead of mouse click, we want mouse down because we want to know that someone has pressed. We also need mouse up. Okay, mouse click is the complete down and up, so you should get a mouse down, a mouse up, and then a mouse click to signify that that's happened. But in this case, we do want to break it apart into multiple pieces. And we're going to also ask about mouse up. Okay. Now we're getting a lot of mouse moves here, so let's just say local last mouse move equals 0. Actually, it's the same logic again because it's just basic throttling logic. So if turbine.engine.game time equals that if game time is greater than last mouse move plus, say, 1. Then we can get it every second. Do that, and then last mouse move equals game time. So your basic throttling code. Come on in, and we can see I'm wiggling my mouse over here, but we're only getting an announcement every second. That's much more manageable. So mouse down, mouse up, and mouse move. So we can set ourselves in a dragging state if the mouse went down and then mouse keeps moving. Now, one of the neat things is if you click down on this control, move off the control, and release, we still get a mouse up event. That's going to be very helpful. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that testing bit, and that, and all of that. Okay, good. So what we want to do is have some state variables. So we're going to say local is dragging equals true. Nope, false. No, is down equals false, and then is down equals true, and then on mouse up is down equals false. Okay. If the mouse is so if this is down while we're moving, then turbine.shell.writeLine dragging. I know I just worked with this. Oh, no, I know why it's not working. Okay, sorry, just got distracted. So let's see that in action. If we come on over here, we can move our mouse all over it, but only when we click and move are we dragging. And as soon as we release, we're no longer dragging. So now we have the ability to tell that we are dragging the window. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it does mean that we might actually want that throttling code that we just got rid of. But for right now, we're going to just see what happens without it. So we want to record the XY position of the start of the drag. So local drag start X equals whatever. Local drag start Y equals whatever. Doesn't matter, because we're going to come on in here and replace that is down equals then drag start X equals turbine dot, I don't know. Where do we get that mouse location? Mouse. Well, it might be coming in with the event, actually. Let's check that before we go too far. Turbine.shell.writeLine, args, and we'll dump out the args table. What do we have there? Unexpected symbol, 288. That's not how you do a comment in Lua. Okay, so when we click, we get a X and a Y. Well, that tells us where we are on here, on that control. Neat. Not what we want, though, and I've done this before. Whenever you implement dragging, you're kind of reinventing this wheel. So let's go take a look at the opaque quest tracker. Okay. So, turbine UI display get mouse position. Perfect. Let's take a look at that. Don't know why I closed that. I'm going to want that again. Okay. So we can come on and just report what that is. Okay, so click here. Oh, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. So mouse current X, mouse current Y. Cool. So we click, and we can see mouse current X and mouse current Y. Now, we can see that's relative to the screen, but that might not actually be what we want. If we could get relative to the parent, that could be nice as well. Let's come into display and see what functions we have. We have get mouse position, awesome. Get mouse X and Y, great. Nope, that's not going to help. So if we want to know relative to, well, do we care? I think we do. I think we want to know how far we are away from the upper left of the window, so that as we get further away from it, we can use that distance as what we're basing our calculations on. And that's not too bad, because we have the mouse current X, mouse current Y, and so we can have relative X equals, and that's going to be actually local window current X, window current Y equals, and that's going to be get position. So our relative X is just going to be the current X minus the window, and the local relative Y equals, and that's going to be all of that, but for Y. Okay, so what I actually want is the relative X and the relative Y. So let's take a look at that. So on the upper left of that box, 277, 504, down here, 303, 531. So now we know how far we are away from the top there. We want to save that off. So that's going to be, instead of saving to local relative, we're going to go ahead and just save that to drag start X and drag start Y. Awesome. So whenever we move, we want to kind of redo this calculation and see what proportionality we've changed. Oh, this is going to... I'm just wondering if this is going to be more complicated. It's always going to be more complicated than I think. We have 300 by 530 here. If I resize this, what values are we going to get? Oh, we get the actual pixels. Awesome. Oh, of course, because we're not actually asking the window where it is. Phew, okay. I think this can work. I feel like this should be cleverer, because we know where in the box we are and how that relates. Do we know where we are in the box? We knew that in the arcs. Okay, so we know that we are at like 26 and 28 or something. Why is that relevant? Because well, the thumb's width and height is 30. Okay. Where are we up here? Okay, so proportionally, we know where we are in this box, but that is actually paying attention to the scaling. So we're not going to ever see anything above 30 by 30, even though the actual pixels are scaled up. I feel like I'm going in circles on that. Okay, let's assume it doesn't matter. So we know where our drag started. Relative to upper left of main window. Gotta stop commenting like I'm writing in C. Okay, so when we are moving, so we want to get the mouse position, we want to redo this calculation. Local drag X equals that. Local drag Y equals that. Okay. So first of all, I think I care about which direction changed more. Like if it's mostly down, then we'll pay attention to that because we have a fixed ratio of width to height here. So if drag Y minus, local X delta X equals drag X minus drag start X, local delta Y, drag Y minus drag start Y. Cool. If math.abs of delta Y or X is greater than math.abs of delta Y, then do something. So local proportion equals, we're at the, let's assume that we are changing the width. That's the delta X. So that is our drag X. How does this math work? Just contemplating whether it's worth trying to get a sense of how proportionally far we are from the edge. I think the answer is not right now, because I keep on thinking this. Okay, so the proportion is, let's have an example also, because it's hard to mental my way through this for right now. So the starting 1x location would be get 300 and 520. If we see a location of around, let's say 400 by 600, then our delta X and I'm not even sure delta is the right thing to do here, because I feel like division is where it's at. Percent X and percent Y. Okay, so our percent x is 133.33. Our percent y is, and that's going to be 600 divided by 520, so 1.15. X is the bigger change, use that. So, local percent equals percent x, but if, well, look at y, but if x is bigger than y, percent equals percent x. Okay, and then that is the percentage that we want to use for the scaling. Sure, let's try that. So, options, when the scaling happens, we get a main when redraw. After setting that width. Cool, this is not going to do update the text in the options window. Okay, so settings, set main width equals proportional width. Now we need a proportional width, so that percentage is window size. Maybe this is more complicated than it needs to be. Maybe we just say, like if we're doing a proportional width, that was the actual width divided by the screen width. Okay. Yeah, okay. This might be more complicated than it needs to be. Actual width, so the actual width, we're just going to call it drag X. Maybe most of this is unnecessary. Yeah, that didn't work. 314. Great. Oh, of course. I do need screen width. Oh, yeah. Now, we have the same problem here that the window can get too big. And so we had a maximum here. So max scale. And ideally, these would just be calculated once and then updated anytime the resolution changes. To do, calculate once, update when resolution changes. Okay, so the max scale, we have screen width, we need screen height. What else? Those are fine. Max scale equals that. And then so the proportional width equals math.max of that and that. Okay. Okay, not correct. Slash plugin space unload fixes that particular problem. I think I meant minimum. Huh. Neat. Well, easy fix. Let's just go delete that save file. Plugin data gone. Okay, so just clicking that still is not functional. But very satisfying other than that. Okay, so we weren't ending up using this percent. Good. The best code is code that you didn't write. So we don't need those. Okay, it's only paying attention to X, right. Okay. Right, because we're only doing this based off the X. We would have to fix how we do this with X and Y in order to do that properly. Okay, so the max X does not matter. Let's see if that still works or if I removed it too much. Okay, so because we can click not at the very corner, we're getting an initial pop because it's based off of incorrect numbers. And so we need a to-do account for the offset of the mouse cursor in the drag box. So we don't shrink a bit at the start. But the other thing is we can get too tall. And then to do, don't let the window get bigger than the screen. Okay. Obviously a few extra things to do here, but the core of it is where we want it to be, which is you can click and start dragging, and the scaling of the window changes, and it's changing snappily enough. I don't think we even need to worry about limiting. We can just let the user kind of self-limit. how fast and how often they drag this. But if they're dragging this, they're probably in a festival. They're probably not in combat, so we don't need to be super performant. And it is nice to see that we can scale all the way down to super tiny. I don't feel like that's a useful size on this size monitor. Okay. So, getting the logic right on that is beyond where I am currently tonight, but we are good on that idea. We can draw, and we just want to hide that background now, right? So set back color, we're no longer doing that. So now if you click and drag on that down there, you get the appearance of the window resizing. Obviously it's scaling and not resizing, but that's pretty neat. Okay, I think that's a great stopping point for tonight. We've got a window. We can pretend to resize it by linking up a fake control on top of that corner and then linking that to the scaling operation. Obviously, some to-dos to really refine it so that you can't accidentally make the window too big. As we've seen, that's not great. I mean, it's great in some respects, but we're going to go ahead and say no. So we've got some controls to do, but on the face of it, that's really what a neat concept, because there's so many windows that are difficult to change the size of. DTracker is full of these because they're full of text, and text font sizes are tricky in LOTRO plugins. But where it'd be really simple to hook something like this up and just say, if you don't mind the anti-aliasing, make it as big as you want to. That's super neat. Well, on that note, now's a great time to get any last minute thoughts, questions, comments, concerns into chat, and we'll be winding down here. Good stuff. Well, just as a reminder, if you participated in the Extra Life donations, raising money for children's hospitals, which is still ongoing, you can still do this. Do not forget to fill out your rewards. The link I just put into stream chat, surveymonkey.com/thatthing. And make sure you fill out and select what rewards you want for donating. Based off how much you give, you can select the things that you want here. There's a box. If you have special thoughts, comments, questions for Cord, type them in there, and make sure you get that done before end of November, it looks like. So, if you're interested in any of these rewards, you can still donate. If you want to support one of the people at Standing Stone Games, you can go to the extralife.org/team/Standing Stone Games. You can donate to the team in general, or you can pick one of the streamers from the roster. It looks like Red Baron hasn't quite reached their goal yet, so you could top them up. Pick from one of the mini streamers, or just whatever. It goes to charity. It goes to help children's hospitals. It's great. Support who you want to support. But once you've done that, remember to fill in this form. Select your in-game rewards that you want to get. There will be drawings, extra drawings, based off of how much was given away. We reached both the 10,000, 20,000, and 30,000 reward tiers. So there will be giveaways for LOTRO point codes and extra picks from the community loot list, and also an ultimate edition of Corsairs of Umbar for 3 people who donated at least $10, and that's definitely a value of more than $10. So get in on that if you have the money to spare, obviously, and have fun with that. Okay. I'm just going to have this side by side here. Yeah, okay, all right. Well, it's not very visible, but on the community loot list, there is in-game titles. There are housing items. There are cosmetic pets. There are musical instruments, and there are mounts. And Cord will do no checking on duplicates, so do maybe check your in-game Stable Master collections panel and double check that you don't already have the thing that you're asking for, or if you can always ask for the code for a friend and give it to a friend. But if you intend to use it yourself and you got the Perlino Steed 5 years ago, Cord's not going to double check that for you. So do watch out for that yourself. Okay, awesome. Well, with that is everything we're going to cover today. I think the next stream on the schedule of today is adventuring back to Rohan with Maelong at 9 p.m. server time. And other than that, thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I hope to see you all here next week, and until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.